Hello, everybody, and welcome to part two, which will be episode 4 of, I knew I was going to forget this, Astrology Meets Economics.
It's our new title, yeah.
Yeah, Astrology Meets Economics. This show, I'm Gary, by the way, of Alternative Interactions, and you are?
10 of Plutonic planes.
Superb. Very coolly done there, Meten. We're going to be looking at today astrocartology and cartology, astro.
No, there's no tautology. There's no tautology in astrocartography,
That's the
but
one.
who cares? We can say it however way, as long as people can see the charts.
Yeah. Astrocartography. I knew I was going to say it right eventually. Only took me 15 attempts. And the astrology charts for what's coming up in the future if I'm a 10. And I will jump in as and when required. But this show is mainly 10 showing what's coming with the energies and expressing that so we get a really good idea, and hopefully we'll be able to from the over information almost of the previous show click some of that into what we're seeing potentially. So Maten, over to you.
You hear me okay, Gary? Make
Yeah,
sure
hear you
I'm
perfectly.
okay. So, what I'm going to do is just give a general interpretation of each planet's meaning relative to the geopolitical mundane astrology of the world. And what is happening on a mundane level, keep in mind, is also happening on a within level. So we're just looking at the mirror outside. And I'm going to do two charts today. One is going to be the astrocartography chart of the spring equinox, around March 21st. And then I'm going to do the actual astrology chart of March 21st. And in those charts, because we're looking at it in a mundane astrology, the sun will be symbolic of our leaders. The moon will be symbolic of our healers, our hospitals, our people, the people that feed us, our food. Mercury will be symbolic of the information highways and how we communicate with each other, and also the fools. And Mars will be symbolic of military might. Venus will be symbolic of the finances and the performers of this world, the actors, the movie that likes to play. And then Saturn will be symbolic of legislative laws. Um, Jupiter will be symbolic of our personal laws. Another way of saying it is Jupiter is the spirit of the law. Saturn is the letter of the law. And then the outer planets, which are initiations through Saturn, both on a mundane level and both on a personal level in one's chart and one's life experience. You can't really access a positive effect of each of those outer malefics unless you have gone through your own conscious realization and awareness of what a Saturnian reality really means and how we penetrate through it. And so, by that I mean that Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn have twofold meanings. So, Uranus on a lower vibration without initiation is rebellion. We see that with children, with young people a lot. And sometimes the rebellion is correct and sometimes it's not. It's just relative to what's necessary in the world at the time. But on a higher frequency level, it represents more of a preemptive, not precognitive awareness, like a simultaneous awareness of a new shocking realization that comes into consciousness. That's higher and uplifting. And with Neptune, the lower expression of it when one's not initiated or the world's not initiated, it'll be delusion, illusion, like trying to move in a mist, not being able to see clearly, murky waters, murky currency waters. Pluto would be in a lower expression. No, sorry. Neptune's higher positive, of course, would be spiritual realization, spiritual sight, intuitive sight, because Neptune really never lifts its veil. You have to feel through Neptune. Neptune is not going to make anything crystal clear. It will through the intuitive faculties. Pluto's lower frequency kind of registration for the world and for individuals who have not been initiated into Plutonic awareness is destruction. If one is able to be initiated and aware of how to utilize that energy, and you can't utilize that energy, the only way you can handle that energy is to void the ego, put the ego away, because no one can control Plutonic energy. So the higher utilization of that energy would just be transformation, right? Which is similar to destruction, but you wouldn't see it as destruction. You would see it as the necessary transformation taking place, and that nothing is being lost, just changed and shifted. And so first I'm going to start with the chart, and then I am going to animate that chart by showing how that chart looks across the world. And we're going to be able to see the 4 lines of the Aries vortex and what part of the world each angle is hitting. Now in a regular astrology chart, and I'll show the chart now so I could show you, there are 4 angles. And those angles and they correspond to like one's individual chart or the world chart, and that corresponds to where things are happening the fastest. And the other houses, the other patterns of 3, the succedent and the cardinal houses, no, that's not the correct term, but the other 2 groups of houses, they correspond to a slower manifestation of events. So the angles, the specific angular houses are the most important to look at right away. And that's what we'll be looking at. And we'll be looking at, more importantly also, where the Aries vortex is in the worldscape, and then where it is in the spring chart. Now, as a reminder from the show we did, whenever we did it, right? For us, it was yesterday, but for you guys, that show I talked about how this chart is not just for us to be worried and preoccupied about the world stage and what's going on. It's also a reminder that during this time period of the March Spring Equinox, that we take time to ourselves and have a whole day of no media and see what visions come up for us, what we want to do, how we want to modify our Aries vortex vision. Because the vision it is one of loss, it is one of voiding, it is one of boundaries being dissolved. It's a dissolving from Neptune, and it's a restructuring from Saturn. So you put that together, and the structures that are expired are being dissolved. And with Neptune's energy and Saturn slowly leaving the Aries vortex as the next couple years progress, the Neptunian vision will be clearer for all of us. So I'll start there. Let me go ahead and share that chart. I'm sharing the request to share.
Yep. Sorted out.
Okay. Okay, so this is the astrology chart for spring, and this is for March 2026. I have it at March 20th. And this is for Washington, D.C., which is the seat of power in the modern world. So from this perspective, we're looking at the U.S. And the ruler of the chart is Mercury. We see it's Gemini rising. I'm also doing this in whole sign, not Placidus. And you can see the ruler of the chart is Gemini. That's the ascendant. And so Mercury is the ruler of this chart. And we look at a chart to see the helmsman, which is the ascendant ruler. How the helmsman is steering the chart, in what direction, in what capacity, is the the helmsman of the chart able to be able to accomplish their motives, what they're trying to accomplish. And I'm doing a chart for each season. So as Gary and I were talking, I'm starting to see a gradual, like a narrative, right? A very clear story from the last video Gary and I did, at least of last year, where we first started with doing the winter chart. So I'm seeing a gradual theme. Now in the winter chart, Gary and I talked about how the chart showed the United States very much involved with creating alliances and destroying alliances. And that's because the sun was in the 11th house. And you could see the sun here is still in the 11th house again. Now it had a different ascendant sign, and the sun was in around Capricorn, late Sag at the time. And of course this time we're in Aries season. So the sun here at the ingress of Spring Equinox, a very sensitive, very psychic time to create a new vision, we have the sun at 0 degrees Aries. You guys can see that? Now the way we want to think about this, for those of you who've been watching our work, is that everything is, or I guess it is, everything is taking place under the central gravity of the Aries vortex. Because all the outer planets are either there or they're aspecting it geometrically. And so it is the center point of manifestations and change that's occurring. The Aries vortex does act as a vanishing point as well as an emergence point. But at this time it is more of a vanishing point. Like a Bermuda Triangle, per se, where things go to disappear and be born again. And that's due to the fact that this is a 0-point world axis point. And so it's a new beginning. So we all experience, for those following our work, the Aries vortex on February 20th. Now on February 20th, Neptune and Saturn joined at Aries 0 degrees and imprinted that point at that time period. So now every time we have a planet revisit that exact degree, it is going to catalyze all kinds of energies into varying levels of manifestation of effects and results. And you could see here, the sun is going to put the life force directly on the Aries vortex. I mean, that's the life force. The sun is the path of life. And that's going to shine directly on the reality checks that Saturn's been doing and the dissolving that Neptune's doing. And this is in, 11 days, Gary?
Yes. Yeah.
And so this is pretty soon. And you could see Venus has already passed into it. And Venus is our finances. And so the reality of our finances is going to be becoming clear in the next 8-9 days. And Gary will have something to share about that soon, as he's been observing this really closely. And this is the symbolic meaning of this season of spring, from March 20th to about June 20th. And as you can see on this chart, all the action is in the 10th and 11th house. The Aries vortex is actually on the world stage in the 10th house, close to the North Node destiny at this current time, which is Pisces, and it's being ruled by Jupiter, which is exalted in Cancer, which is at the bottom of the screen, which will move into Leo in July. Now what does that mean? That means the next level of manifestation and extreme amplification of what's really happening behind the scenes will be revealed in July. But April is the pivot point for a new level of momentum building and motivation building. And this is motivation that anyone can utilize. On the geopolitical stage, it could be the countries going forward with their plans. It could be another plot released into the collective, right, into the mundane, into our movie screen. But it could also be us making a courageous move forward in modifying and editing the vision of our personal Aries vortex. And as you could see here, Pluto's in the ninth, which means the preoccupation is with foreign lands, war with foreign lands. Pluto can be destruction on a negative level, or it could be transformation. The moon, which is the people, is opposed Jupiter in the first house, which means the people they're not so keen with what's going on. They're not in agreement with what's happening. And the force of Jupiter on the ascendant is opposite the moon, which means that there's not a clear sense of measure yet of what's happening. Because Jupiter's endless expansion, and it's in the second house, ruling the Pisces and the Sagittarius part of the chart. So it's ruling right now the effect of the Aries vortex on the current world in this time period, as well as the seventh house, which is the house of the hidden enemy, right? Or the open enemy. Sorry, the open enemy. And you can see the people are in that position, being that it's the moon. People are not in agreement with what's happening. They're not in agreement. They know that another movie is playing now. Now that Neptune has moved away from Pisces into Aries, we have a new vision, a new agenda on a geopolitical scale, a new movie playing. And, we don't want to go to the theater anymore. We don't want to pay the money to see that movie anymore. We're not really, because that's not reality, right? That's a reality being projected onto us for us to agree with and accept and allow. But that's not what's happening. Uranus in the 12th means that the rebellion is hidden. We can't see it. They can't see it. The fourth column is active. It's hidden. And as Gary and I were talking before, it's fascinating to watch on a geopolitical level that it's just not as simple as before. It's not as simple as this agenda is going to work out or that agenda is going to work out. There's actually a lot of complicating factors. And it's not as easy as maybe one side has thought. And so this is the chart. Gary, you want to come and comment? I know I said a lot about the people being the open enemy and there being a hidden rebellion and the sun and the alliances, attempted alliances, destruction of those alliances. Bring it forth, Gary.
I think we're seeing that very, very clearly at the moment with the flip-flopping in Europe currently. Them not really knowing what to do. They don't have a mandate from the people regarding what's going on in the Middle East. They're already committed to a campaign that can't be won in Europe itself. This is just a step too far, I feel, for Europe. And I think that's putting the strain on the alliances. I mean, Spain recently, and Donald Trump had words, and he tried to threaten them fundamentally. And Spain ended up laughing at Donald Trump. Now, whatever you think of Donald Trump and Spain or whatever, the fact that there was an open disregard for Donald Trump in the way it happened shows that there is deep discord. They're not all on the same page. Years ago, it would not have mattered what Donald had done. They would have all been on the same page. Now they're not. We're seeing fractures. We're seeing the fraction of different agendas different wants and needs, and it's getting very interesting politically. New agendas you spoke about, a vision for the people to see what's really going on and what's real. Now, that's really interesting because in the Middle East at the moment, we have the old alliances that seem to be crumbling very quickly. And yet we have an alliance that I kind of disregarded a bit with China and their ability to be so effective in our last chat militarily. But that doesn't mean that they are not very effective technology wise. And you can almost see that the line's been drawn where Iran is being supported by China and probably Russia as well, but very much so. And it looks like America's been tricked into an action or forced into an action by a rogue state that has its own agenda. And this agenda is obvious to some, not to others. Meten and I were talking earlier, and Astrology Joe, I think it was on Sunday evening, uh, did a live show, which is worth watching because it kind of gives you some of the nuts and bolts of what's behind and what's going on behind there, and something that we're not going to be particularly going into in this show because the information's out there if you want to dig for it. But watch Astrologer Joe, his Sunday live. He certainly does talk about the cause or the underlying control mechanism that's running as a theme through this, and it runs through the money as well. But what we appear to be seeing is a collapse of the old mechanism, the old joining, the old groups. Remember, the Middle East was paying America a lot of money to protect it. And when it came down to it, America was seen wanting. Now, we will get into that potentially later as well, because there's some more bits and pieces to be filled on that. But that is a very, very interesting thing. Now, politically, it's interesting, but financially, it's devastating. We have the Arab nations considering all their investments within America, all the hard work and all the alliances that we saw at the beginning of the year that Meten was talking about, of the building up of where we were trying to create investment into infrastructure in America in one foul swoop has been undermined. It's almost as if the tower was built on bad, dodgy ground, and the foundations of that tower have suddenly been ripped away, and America's going for its own tower moment currently. And you just don't know which way the tower's going to fall into whose arms. Who's, in the tower, there's people falling out of the tower. Who's going to catch them? Who's going to catch the people that are falling, or will nobody decide to catch the people that fall? And this is financial. The Gulf states are pulling all their finances back out of the deals done. We've seen BlackRock and Blackstone. Thank you very much, Meten. Blackstone. Blackstone's a relatively small monetary system with only 3 billion in assets. Last week, they closed down their private equity pools so people couldn't, or companies could not pull money out. BlackRock have just done the same. This is unprecedented. And institutional investors of the biggest investment broker company in the world have got to be asking serious questions because they're now locked into a company and they can't get their assets out. which to me means that the cupboard's bare. And that's your pension, everybody. It's almost as if what we're seeing here is a gamble, the last gamble. The cupboard's empty, and they've used the last few magic beans in that cupboard. And instead of, paying out people and looking after the investors, they've shoved it into the military complex on a gamble of taking over a region that is pretty ill conceived, in my opinion. And that for me is what the chart's showing. And the sun sitting there is going to burn anything away. Anything that touches that sun in direct. You've taught me well, Meten. You've taught me well.
Kazemi, yeah, Kazemi.
Yeah. So we're going to fundamentally get the Kazemi effect of the sun burning away the emperor's clothes. And what's going to be standing there, and Meten said it very clearly, the people will not be happy because they may be unclear of what's happening, but they'll also be very clear on what's happening because it will affect them in their pocket. Inflation and petrol, food costs, everything is going to start going up. And that certainly does shine a light on the situation very quickly when we're all struggling to feed our families and pay the bills.
Well said, Gary. Thanks. I'm going to take it a bit further. I'm going to amplify Gary's points by sharing now the astrocartography chart of the same moment of March equinox. And I haven't shared astrocartography charts before. I do astrocartography readings. Hold on, I'm not seeing the chart. Do you see it, Gary?
I see a chart. I see Canada, Greenland, some wavy lines. That's a bit better. I think we can see the world a bit more. Let's cause some controversy. You should have stuck it on the flat Earth map.
What?
Then you
They
you
don't.
can
They
link
don't
it.
make. They don't make astrocartography um, maps on a flat Earth scale. That would be cool though. That would be awesome though. I hope someone does. Starts to. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. I can make it a little larger at points. There we go. So it looks like a lot of horizontal? No.
Vertical.
Longitudinal
Yeah, yeah.
lines coming from the top. And here's the only way you could see the planetary. If you know the planetary glyphs, I'll go over them really quickly from left to right. Let me see if my pointer's working. I need to make my pointer bigger. So on the left is Uranus at the IC, which is home. The IC is the human coeli. That's the home in the astrology chart. Then we have the moon at the midheaven, which is the stage of the world. Jupiter at home. Then we have Mars at home. Pluto on the stage of the world. Over here you see the Aries vortex on the stage of the world, with the north node in between. I lost my cursor again. Oh, there it is. Okay. And then the sun with Venus. The sun is our leaders, and then we have Venus, finances, and then we have Mercury. And you could see at this point, we have finances, the leadership, and Mercury, the communication, all together with the Aries vortex. You can see this right now. It's all over Greenland. And what has been the talk of the town for a while? The redistribution of the territory, or the takeover of the territory of Greenland. And so that's on the spotlight of the Aries vortex. And remember, the Aries vortex is a vanishing point, an emergence point as well, but initially a vanishing point. As we move further, we could see that Uranus midheaven going through Western Europe, all the way down what is that? Norway and
Norway.
Sweden. The borders of Norway and Sweden down into Austria, Germany, and down to Libya, Nigeria, and the rest of South Africa. As we move over, we see the moon going through Eastern Europe and Jupiter going through Turkey and Egypt and Sudan all the way down. We can see some of these lines you guys will see that are not labeled. It's because they're labeled from the bottom up. So that complicates things a little. But there is a color scheme here. So if you see red, it's the sun. So this is a sun line. And you can see the color scheme. Uranus is green, moon is light blue, Jupiter is like a bluish purple, Mars is like a purple. I don't know if I'm even seeing the clear colors. And you could see Russia. A lot of lines are going through Russia on this day as well as Iraq, Iran, no surprise, Saudi Arabia. Turkey's not far from that as well, and Madagascar. As we move further along, we see Mars going through India. We know there's been conflict there between Pakistan and India, so that's something to watch for as well. Pluto is going through China, and Uranus is on the descendant going through China, which means the descendant is like the open enemy, right? And that's definitely something that's quite clear to all of us. As we move along to this area here, we have another Aries vortex show up. I'm just going to move the image. Okay. So this Aries vortex is going through, I should note that it's home, it's the IC, and it's going through Japan, as well as Australia and New Zealand. No, not New Zealand, right? New Zealand's over here. Yeah, not New Zealand. Sorry.
Yes,
So
Papua New
Australia.
Guinea, that is.
Yeah, New Guinea. Yes, that's correct. Thanks. And so there's going to be 4 groupings of Aries vortex, and that's one in East Asia, as I noted, and another one here on Greenland, and then there's another one here. We can only see it from the bottom, but the Aries vortex is occurring on the ascendant of this chart. It's happening on the west coast of the United States. Now in the winter chart, it was directly on the west coast. And so a lot of people were commenting about how there could be earthquakes in the west coast, there could be significant things occurring. We're still on that chart until March 20th. We're still kind of in this energy. So something to watch for. Although the markers, I didn't see the markers. I was saying in the last video that if we saw some big earthquakes in the west coast during the eclipse, the February 17th eclipse, or the Aries vortex, I was saying that that would be a foreshadowing for further challenges and potential earthquakes in this chart in the spring equinox season. But maybe it could be other types of earthquakes, as Gary reminded me. Isabella by Tarot, Isabella had said in her last chart that we did together when we were looking at some of these dates. Now, because it's in the waters of the west coast, I would say there's still potential, because there could be earthquakes around this area here, you know what I mean? And that could easily affect the land masses to the east. And so that Aries vortex goes down there. You can see South America is dealing with the lines of Jupiter, the moon, and Uranus. And so maybe more sudden shocks in Argentina or the western coast of South America. And you can see in the United States, on this chart, we have Pluto going down from, I think that's, I can't tell, but Michigan is right here. And I know this is Montana, the Dakotas are here, and then Wisconsin and Minnesota are around here, because it's 2 lines. It's both the moon Sorry to make you guys dizzy. And Uranus. So sudden shocks there. And we've had sudden shocks already in Minneapolis. We were talking about Isabella's interpretation of around January 20th to the 28th being a first shot rang of a new revolution. And what came up for me was the incident in Minneapolis, the shots fired there. And they're still suffering a lot of control there and a lot of fallout from what occurred. And you see Venezuela is here continuously marked, and it's marked by the moon on the descendant, so an open enemy, right? And then here on the tip of eastern Brazil, so the Aries vortex that's hitting Greenland is also hitting this eastern coast of Brazil. So this is Rio, this is a lot of the coastal areas there.
Can I just make a point while you're on Brazil?
Yes.
Before we called our show what we do now, which is astrology meets economics, we were doing forecast shows, weren't we? And we correctly forecast that on the 22nd, 21st of September, that there would be a major financial wobble somewhere in the world. That turned out to be Brazil. And America had to go in, bail out Brazil.
No, you're talking about Argentina, Gary.
It's Brazil that went.
Really?
Brazil. Yeah. Was it Argentina? No, sorry, it was Argentina. You're quite right.
Yeah, if we're talking about the September eclipse on September 21st.
It was Argentina, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Argentina still has to come round again and be cleaned and see. We need to see that still, because when that happened in September, I think we were still in a kind of a area where the full fallout wouldn't be seen till 6 or 8 months later. And that's coming up soon. But Brazil is a BRICS nation. We've got a lot of energy going through Brazil currently. Argentina is not BRICS. Venezuela has just been taken over. Brazil sitting there in the middle. And it's BRICS nation. And it's the only BRICS nation in that region. Nowhere else in America is BRICS. Are we going to see something happen? Just putting it out there. Are we going to see something with Brazil, with that energy flowing through Brazil, knowing that China, Russia are BRICS nations, and Brazil's one of the founding nations, which is the B in BRICS? Are they in a position that could cause some issues in the coming future, with potential issues with oil and resources that are coming in? Because if you think America controls or will control vast amounts of resources with what's going on, are they going to force Brazil to do something to maintain the integrity of that country or not?
It's very possible with all this action occurring. I mean, the Aries vortex is hitting Brazil. It makes me want to look at where Brasilia is on the map. Brasilia is right there. Brasilia is right here. That's not too far from actually, it's in a zone of intensity between the Aries vortex lines and the Jupiter moon line. Wow. So when there's too many lines in an area, and this goes for a geopolitical chart or an individual chart, when you have too many lines coming together, that's known as a zone of intensity. And it's better to avoid such areas. You don't want to live, it's too much energy. It's too much shock. It's too much shock for the nervous system of a person or a country. And Gary's right to bring that up because I think that's going to come back on the stage. That country is going to come back into the world stage and news.
Because we're seeing almost an identical pattern for me in a very, very rough way, going straight through Russia, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia currently.
Yeah, I mean, right here we have it. I mean, it's the look at that. I mean, it's another Aries vortex line, and it's a zone of intensity. We haven't heard too much about Saudi Arabia, but something is going to happen in Saudi Arabia this year, from my charts. Iran, obviously, already, and Turkey will be involved, with some changes as well. And, that's as much as I can say for now until we dig deeper into the other charts. I think at this point, Gary, I'll give a summary of the winter chart, or the winter, spring, summer, and autumn charts. Of course, I've only presented the winter and the spring, so I'll just give everybody a hint of what I've seen in the other charts, and then we can give our. You can give the report on the market of silver and gold, and I'll give my report on crypto. We'll just do like a little support for everybody. So what I saw in the charts for winter was the show starting to, how would I say this, like, a show is being performed on the world stage, right? The big superpower, directing the affairs of other countries covertly or subvertly or openly, overtly. And what we began to see, and Gary and I have said this in many videos and showed this, that the illusions of the performance were starting to break through. The actors weren't able to hold their roles, and we started to see kind of, the holes in the plots, and the show not playing out as well as they thought. There was supposed to be a takeover in China that did not happen, right? That was the story, that was the script, but it didn't go as planned, did it? And so the first season, winter, was starting to show the delusion of thinking that you have just a easy show and you're going to sell it, and you know what I mean? It's going to go as planned. Now we're doing the spring equinox chart, and we've seen in the last couple weeks extremely just like bold and shameless acts of assertion and power. I mean, art of war tactics, beyond the pale in this war with Iran. We've also seen legislative failures. The tariffs didn't go through. The Supreme Courts in the United States said no go on that. And this attempt to create powerful alliances is starting to dissolve. There's starting to be problems with that because the Gulf states are an ally. And all of a sudden, as you and I have been talking, that ally has been left out to dry for a more coercive agenda that has to do with oil and the uses of oil, which there are others besides the obvious, as Gary made clear to me earlier. And then in the summer, as I made clear, and let me add real quick. So the end of the spring is June 20th. And so we're going to see more of this in the coming month, the coming 2 months, March and April. More of these like just bold, outright attempts to, just take control of this or that. And in the summer, there'll be a period of calm, May, June, and then in the last week of June, right after we get into summer solstice, we have another huge amplification and emotional cycle release. And that is going to be a setup for July. And so July, this kind of confidence will continuously attempted to be projected during this time. there are so many events that occur, in the United States and around this time. There's the 4th of July, the Independence. There's so many sideshows happening that it's going to be just like a carnival freak show. We won't know what to make out of anything. There'll be so much information overload coming from every direction. And as soon as we go into 4th of July, Jupiter, a couple days before, around June 30th, will enter into Leo and directly oppose Pluto in Aquarius. So we have power, transformation versus expansion. And the result of that, also there's a Mars-Uranus conjunction in the summer as well, which of course is a signifier of war. Not to mention that as soon as Uranus goes into Gemini on April 26th, that is a nuancing and amplification of war tactics as well, because Uranus in Gemini is strategic and mental and shocking and random, and that will elevate the stakes in war tactics. So the summer, there's going to be potential shocks, and not just the open enemies that we've noted, but hidden enemies will start to come from below the surface. And then as we move into August, eclipses, more shocks will occur, more hidden agendas will occur, as they did in February, of which we're not entirely clear about yet. And then September will be a period of fall, not necessarily calm. Both May and September are periods of adapting to the shocks. You know what I mean? Like us in our daily lives adapting to the new prices, the new changes, the new shifts. And so it'll be the same in September. We'll have a chance to breathe in September before the October retrogrades, the October-November retrogrades of Venus and Mercury, creating the possibility of a period of really increased change and shock to our financial system. To Venus in retrograde. So the changes, whatever changes are occurring, will be evident to all of us, and it will affect us. And it's a period where the mask will no longer be able to be covering and hiding anyone, especially on a geopolitical scale. It'll be more and more clear to everyone what these agendas are doing, what they are, who are the actors behind, this new script, this new movie. Because the script won't hold up. It won't hold up. We'll begin to really see through it. And that will be a period of crisis from October, November, and December will be going out with a bang, because even though December and November calm a little, late November calms a little, December, the energy will begin rising into 2027, the year of which no one wants to say too much, because Gary and I have already looked at some of the charts and talked about it, and Gary's shared his own intuitive insights on it, as I've shared with him my view on the charts, and it's something we haven't really taken the time to fully look at yet, but wow, I mean, it's it's nothing we can hint about right now, because even ourselves, we're not totally clear, at all. And no one, I don't think many claim to be yet. We just know that February 2027 bodes the huge shift of the right angle cross of planning according to human design into the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is a positive turn for individuated financial awareness. And that means, us finding our sovereignty in our own, in a way I'd say becoming our own banks, right? Because if we're not depending on an external bank, then we have to take on that responsibility that's ourselves. And I'll stop there. Gary, your response, your insights, and then we can go into our own kind of just light general forecast of crypto and the digital and the silver gold markets,
Yeah.
commodities markets.
This chart I find fascinating. And if we took this as a generalization, I think we can clearly see why China got away with the coup because there's not enough energy going through it. And I know this is a date later on, but when we start looking at the lines and the energies, China's a very big country and there's not a lot happening energy wise. When we start looking at Saudi Arabia, um, Iran, Iraq, going up northwards, which is Russia, in the geopolitical sense, and within the conflict sense, there's a lot of energy building up in this region, huge amounts. It's also very interesting that we have the green line. And what did the green stand for again? Sorry, Meten?
Venus, the
Venus.
financial.
Right. Venus is going through Germany.
Oh no, sorry, Mercury. That's Mercury going through. Oh, but in terms of Germany, yeah, yeah. You give me the specific areas sometimes because sometimes the colors are so Uranus.
Yeah,
Sometimes the color scheme changes, or
yeah,
is
yeah,
more than one country.
yeah.
So that's Uranus going through Germany. Sudden shocks, sudden changes.
Right. Sudden shocks, sudden changes in Germany, right? Taiwan is also part of this, I think, and it's going to be very, very interesting with China. The Strait of Hormuz that we spoke about last show being shut, the lack of oil, there's a byproduct that's used from oil, as well as the gas that's needed to power the plants. Taiwan needs. There's no ships coming out to supply Taiwan with its energy requirements. And Taiwan's kind of in the middle, it's close-ish to all that, isn't it?
Taiwan is where
Right where
around
your cursor is.
here,
No, next one up.
right
Yep,
here. Okay.
yeah, I'm sure that's Taiwan. What we've got is quite, and Japan as well. And look at
Hmm.
we know the carry trades, the yen carry trades causing massive financial problems. And Japan is on the crossroads completely with that at the moment. So it could be that Japan is seen for what it really is. But and Japan is reliant also on imported energy. If the problem in the Middle East continues, Taiwan particularly is going to be in trouble. Apparently, they've only got 2 weeks worth of gas supplies before they have to shut down their semiconductor manufacturing. That means no chips worldwide. That means sudden shocks in Germany where all the plants will shut down. It means sudden shocks in Japan where all the plants will shut down. Manufacturing will cease. And this could be why Donald Trump's talking about military escorts of ships going through there to get key ships into certain key areas. So they could have shot themselves in the foot, Meten, because if the conflict in the Middle East continues and the issues with the oil continues, I mean, we see, was it yesterday, that Israel took out some of the biggest refineries in Iran, key infrastructure that would have been needed by America if they were to take the country over, has just been destroyed.
Why?
That's what America said to Israel. That's what America said to Israel. Why? Is it because they want to make sure that the area is no good for America and they can more easily turn it into the Greater Israel, the promised land that they wrote in their own book to promise it to themselves? Remember, we're going to see alliances break and fall, and the strains of these things going on. We've already seen it with Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and such like pulling all their investments back and being left out to dry. But what if America is also being played? Were they really complicit in the attacks, or were they forced into the attacks? Were they forced to join something, or was it really their decision? There's a lot of energy around here, huge amounts. And I think with this chart, what we're seeing as it plays out, and I certainly do think, Brazil, you know, Japan are going to be key coming up, as well as this Middle East section. We're seeing key areas of the world where we're going to have unforeseen currently issues and some issues that we do see. Now, one of the things that I'm aware of in the Middle East currently is the resupply of missiles and weaponry for the USA and their allies. I don't think the USA can manufacture the weapons quickly enough, the rockets quickly enough. And there could become, if this conflict becomes elongated, a position where America has to make some very hard decisions and may have to lose face or claim a victory when it's really not. And as the stakes increase and they get more and more desperate, is somebody going to make a desperate move that means that Russia, with all that energy going through it, makes a stand and really shows the bear stands up and shows its teeth? And I'm thinking about Woo Woo Dude from Pt4, where he has seen in the past a major mistake and the Russian bear standing up and changing things very much. With the energy going through Russia at the moment, and it all connected into that region, it's very, very interesting. Straight through Russia, look.
So small, the cities. I'm looking for Moscow. I see St. Petersburg, but it's somewhere over here.
Yeah, St.
Yeah,
Petersburg is,
it's
yeah,
it's the hot zone. In other words, it's the spotlight of the stage for this year. It really is. And what Gary, what you're saying? Wow. I mean, one thing I could do. I mean, it's a lot more layers of it, but to begin to do the charts of each country, will kind of help see the thematic playing out.
I think you'd only need to do, I think Japan would be key because of the energy going through and the fact that that's responsible for the carry trade. They hold an awful lot of American debt bonds, and without doubt, they're going to have to be reinvesting into the American debt bond system where they've been dumping them quite strongly for the last few years because the supply of oil to Japan is going to be key in Japan's survival moving forward. And whatever price America, now the largest supplier of oil in the world, asks for, Japan's over a barrel.
Yeah, they'll definitely be in the headlines. What's the IC?
Brazil's very interesting because of the amount of energy going through it. But Russia, in regards to that Middle Eastern area, I think is connected together very much so, and will, I think, have an effect on the world. Because remember, Russia and China have enough gold to back their currencies at 40%. They're fundamentally a gold-backed currency. They don't need tokenization. They have everything they need. China would obviously like more oil from diverse situations, but fundamentally, Russia can supply China the shortfall. And India, that was meant to have stopped buying Russian oil, never did. And between 20 and 40% of all the oil going into India this last year has been via Russia. Regardless of what the headlines have said, that India asked permission of America to keep the oil coming in. They've been doing it anyway. They're BRICS nations. And again, there is a cross going over in India of two different colours.
What's even more fascinating is all these lines that are going through the Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, all these lines. If you notice here, you see how it says DC on all these planets, Venus. Well, no, actually, the ones that are connected is the Sun, DC, Saturn, DC, Neptune, DC, Chiron, DC. Notice that the DC is the descendant, so it's the seventh house. It's the house of the open enemy. And this is a United States, Washington, DC, astrocartography chart. So where's the enemy? The enemy's going to be on the descendant angle. And there it is. It's in conflict with these areas here.
Just because one side starts with one side at the beginning of something does not mean that at the end of something they're both holding hands. The relationship may break. So you could go into something as buddies and come out as enemies.
And some art of war tactics, and that's what's played on the stage of the world, but it's also obscured on some level. So we don't really know who the friends and enemies really are, because there's games being played and it's not clear.
Now, getting back to the finance on gold and silver, it's very clear that silver is being manipulated like you would not believe. In actual fact, I was wondering on the last show why silver was being suppressed so much, bearing in mind the scarcity of silver currently. And then I realised I'd actually said it in the show myself. All the American warheads require huge amounts of silver. BlackRock and Co. are the owners of the weapon manufacturers, the industrial complex of war. If silver became too expensive, they would not be able to make so much money. So they're suppressing the silver, I think, so they can suck the last bits of silver physicality out of the COMEX and the system for the industrial war effort without costing them any more money than they want to be paying for it. that is really quite devious. But what that does fundamentally mean is when the silver does finally run out, and it's gonna go through the roof, and it will not be able to stop. They won't be able to stop it.
Do you think, I'm just going to plug something there, do you see anything with that for this year? And if so, do you see it for April, July, or sometime at near the end of the year?
I think in April we're going to start seeing the silver shortage, and it's going to be more mainstream. And I think July it will start to cause major issues. For 6 years we've been short, and what, we're 650 million ounces short for this year coming, and we only mine 850, 60 million ounces of silver for 6 years running. Fundamentally, we're out, and the price is still low. The price is being manipulated on purpose. And for a good while, China was sucking that silver out. Remember, China has got an export embargo fundamentally on silver. And China and the Shanghai COMEX, or the Shanghai Bullion Exchange, is not supplying the COMEX anymore to get the banks out of the shorts, because they know if they did that, they would actually be supplying the very ingredient needed for weapons that could be fired against them or their allies in the very near future. Silver and gold will go up exponentially in the very near future, because it's the only solid, tangible asset that's real money. But we have hyperinflation, which will be hastened by this war due to the oil issue. You know, lorries need diesel. Lorries to run need diesel. Lorries supply in the UK all the food everywhere. Straight away, if a tank of fuel doubles or trebles or quadruples, that price has to be passed on to the consumer. And it's the same with energy, household energy prices. They will go up through the roof. This is inflationary. This is debasement of the pound or the dollar. Doesn't matter where you are. Trump might flood America with its own oil to manipulate the price of fuel down, to keep the American public on side for his ratings, but that will be at the expense of the rest of the world. And countries like Taiwan, who are key semiconductor manufacturers, are completely and utterly reliant on shipping, supplying what they need. And at the moment, they're getting nothing. Remember, if you don't hold it in your hand, you don't own it. Look at BlackRock and the institutions. The biggest institution in the world is stopping investors, big investors, from drawing money out. If they had physical gold and silver in vaults, they wouldn't need to be going to BlackRock. They wouldn't need to be asking anybody else. And that then leads into crypto and the shenanigans that I see with crypto. And I think Meten is going to explain very, very clearly, hopefully, with what we think we could be seeing with crypto and why crypto is going to go up in value before it goes down. and the reasons why, perhaps. So over to you, Miten, if you're happy with that.
Okay, so the thing we saw from winter that crypto was going to be neither well, actually I think I did make the forecast that to get to and to get out just means to put it aside for now, or sell what you need to, do what you will. But I did say that there would be a crash coming. I warned my Discord community around January 20th. I may not have shared that in my forecast, I can't remember. But I warned of a crash, and sure enough, we got that crash maybe a couple weeks, maybe a week or so later than I said, or maybe around that. I can't remember. But that has led to a February kind of bearish posture for cryptocurrencies, and it's continued with a bearish prognosis for March so far. And it looks like April. I mean, we've seen some ups and downs here in March. I think that'll continue in April, and it'll begin pivoting upwards as we move into May, and then as we move into June, and then it looks like July we may reach another apex point, another peak, fueled by all the different financial circumstances occurring. So it could be a major move up during that time. I'd say August looks bullish as well, but there likely will be a sideways turn, where the carnival ends somewhere around August 12th to August 17th due to certain aspects that are occurring. And then September, kind of a correction that starts. And October and November, being the retrogrades of Mercury and Venus, don't look very promising. And then as we move out of the year, the markets will attempt to stabilize until we move into 2027. And then we'll see what will occur. And this is in relation to crypto in the sense of, this is a digital finance that is also manipulated like silver, as Gary was talking about. And the manipulations will continue, but the manipulations are for the tokenization of everything. Because once everything is tokenized, you can create a digital economy, is the plan. And right now is, the wars for territory, both digital territory, physical, terra, earth territory, all layers of territory are being fought for right now, even in the metaphysical, the spiritual spaces, territory of what kind of frequencies and fields of existence. When we talk about like the bifurcation of the worlds, like who's occupying what territory. So the wars are all occurring this year to determine the new lines that are going to be drawn for the new map of the territory. And this is my sense of, a very general sense of how crypto will respond and how it will be established. If the plans go further in relationship to a tokenized digital economy, then we will see a digital gold standard established, and that would make a lot of sense with Jupiter going into Leo, because Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun is what rules gold. So gold will be the one to watch in the second latter half of this year. And I'd say that's about it, Gary, unless you have anything to add. That's my general sense of the digital markets for the remainder of the year.
I was just looking for something because I came across some news today that the Federal Reserve has just linked itself to a new bank, which is a digital crypto bank, and it's the first crypto bank to be backed by the Fed. I can't remember what it's called. It could be called Fox or something. I can't remember. I was just looking for it. It wasn't one of the ones I'd ever come across. And that's quite interesting because I think what we're going to see with the crypto is, yeah, it's going to go up, but I think it's going to go up because the money that's been made off the oil in America, I think they're going to kind of pump it into crypto, but it'll be the debt that are part of it that goes into the crypto. And they will create a bubble in crypto of debt, and then they will crash the crypto down. And with the money that they've got to one side, be able to buy the debt back at a fraction of the price or cost of the debt. And I think what Meten's describing as it goes up and then they crash it down in the autumn, for me, kind of fits into that kind of situation. And what we're going to see is the two graphs crossing with gold and silver. You know, as one crashes or one goes down, one will go up as the markets are manipulated.
Yeah.
It'll almost be an opposite to each other, won't it? It'll be like a
Yeah.
wave. As one wave goes up, the other wave's going to go down because they're controlling the amount of finance or currency in the market. And normally, when they do that, that preempts a crash. So in 2008, what really caused the crash was the fact that they started to pull back on the debt. And so there was less money in the system to pay back that debt. And ultimately, it created a pinch point where investors started to fail and certain banks and organizations were allowed to collapse to create this effect of a crash. So the bankers could then go in and rob everybody of their houses, goods, and everything they'd worked for, real assets, and then restart this bubble again once it asset stripped everybody. And I think we're going to see something very similar, but they're going to use the crypto as one of the major arms of reducing the debt. But that only works if the war in the Middle East goes well. And at the moment, it's very, very questionable.
You said if only if the war in the Middle East goes what?
Well,
Ah, I see. Okay.
you know, because it's all about the and it kind of really is. I think Bahrain had one of their major oil refineries destroyed today or yesterday as well. So it seems to me that oil refineries are major targets at the moment in all countries. So that only leads refineries in the non-Middle Eastern areas working. And who would control those? Well, that'd be the Rockefellers, and that would be America. Something that I spoke to Meten privately about while we're on oil is since the 1960s, America has been drilling for oil and capping wells off. America has wells everywhere, and they have not been exploiting that oil. So America has huge reserves of oil. They have the ability to refine it. They have all the shipping available to them in non-war zone areas. Looks to me like the Middle East allies just got played for chumps. But we'll see, won't we?
All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. We're going to call it there. And we'll see you guys in the. We'll probably do a video before then, but we will definitely be doing an update for the summer solstice cycle, the next seasonal quarter cycle. We'll probably do that around. We're doing this one in the beginning of March, so we'll probably do it beginning of June.
Yeah, yeah,
And if we have any other updates, we'll do videos in May. April, I will be on hiatus. I won't be doing any collabs in April, but we'll join back up in May and June and throughout the year. So thanks everyone for watching. Gary, thank you so much.
Pleasure, Meten. Thank you very much. Superb chart, superb insight and teaching. Thank you for that.
Oh, your brilliance too. Animating. You bring my charts to life, man. You animate them. they're just they're just abstract corpses without your insight. So I appreciate that.
So thank you very much, everybody. And I'm pretty sure after April, which is going to be a very, very interesting month, that we'll have an awful lot to say about that once some of the dust has settled. So, financially wise, we shall catch up with you in the very near future. Love, light, and blessings, everybody. Bye.